Okay, so let's talk about your entrepreneurial options. And what I mean by that is that traditional entrepreneurship isn't the only way to be an entrepreneur. So in this lecture, I'm going to distinguish between 4 different types of entrepreneurship that we frequently see in the marketplace. And I'm going to start with the traditional entrepreneur. The traditional entrepreneur is somebody who develops a service or creates a product that they want to bring to the market. They're out there to exploit a market opportunity. The concept that they are exploiting generally requires significant startup capital and resources. By capital, I'm talking money that they need to have on hand in order to invest. And by resources, it might be people, it might be time, it might be something else. The traditional entrepreneur generally works in the entrepreneurial venture full-time, and they generally try to grow the business through scale, multiple locations. They might try to enter multiple markets. So I might start with socks, and then I branch out into leggings. Okay. Some examples of traditional entrepreneurial businesses might be your standard restaurant, a clothing store, a yoga studio. We call it like brick and mortar businesses where you go to a physical location with 4 walls. Highly developed online stores can generally fall into the traditional entrepreneurship category. Really, you're looking at what types of resources do they need, how much money do you need to get going, and how much time do you have to dedicate to it. In order to be a traditional entrepreneur, you need capital. That's either your personal savings or a loan or venture capital. We'll talk about all of those. You need the ability to devote a significant amount of time. You need to make sure that your concept is thoroughly researched because you're putting a lot of resources in. You want to make sure that those resources are going somewhere, and you need a pretty detailed business plan. The socialpreneur is somebody who wants to make a social difference. So rather than sell a product or service, they're looking to make a change. That change might be to a group of people, that change might be to the environment, but there is an opportunity that person wants to exploit, but the return isn't necessarily for profit, it's for doing good. The socialpreneur might need to meet specific legal criteria, like if they want to open up a nonprofit enterprise, then you have to meet specific legal guidelines. Every endeavor, whether it's a for-profit business or a social venture, needs it to bring in money in order to perpetuate itself, and in the social venture needs to do more good. Where sales would be what comes into a clothing store, generally it's donations that come into a social venture. And your tactics to raise donations are in many ways the same tactics that you would use to generate sales in any other kind of business. In order to start a social venture, you need passion. You need that problem that you want to solve. And that problem can be something as simple as, you want to distribute socks to the homeless population in Oceanside, a very small scale. You can start it up in a room in your house, or it could be something as large as you want to find empty apartments and generate a way to fill empty apartments or empty hotel rooms with people who need a place to stay, which would be a much grander venture and which might require a whole lot more capital. So scale doesn't necessarily matter with social ventures. You need the ability to be persuasive, and then you need those resources, again, determinant on the scale of your concept. If you're talking about making socks for people, that's like a 1-person, very low startup gig. If you're talking, grander scale, then the resources you need is gonna increase considerably. The micro-entrepreneur or the micropreneur is someone who is an entrepreneur on a very, very small scale. Their hobby might be their concept might be based on a hobby, a skill that they have, or an interest. So I might like to bake. And because I like to bake and I'm eating too many of my own cookies, I realize that I can sell my cookies and make other people happy. I get to enjoy making cookies and I make a little bit of money. The concept could be based on a skill that I might have. So I am really good at writing, and so maybe my skill is, in my writing skill, I'm writing business plans for people. Or I'm good at making soap. And so I'm maybe my skill is making soap bars and I'm going to sell my soap. Or it could be based on an interest. I'm interested in learning how to do something, and then once I learn how to do something, I kind of become obsessed with it, like knitting blankets. And I become obsessed with it, and there's only so many blankets I can knit, and so at some point I probably want to start to sell them. Micropreneurship is generally very low cost because it eliminates a lot of the traditional costs that are associated with starting a business. Location is generally your house. Staffing is generally you, maybe one other person. Micropreneurs generally do not work full-time. It's generally, as you start out, it's a source of supplemental income. It's always good to start as a micropreneur, get good at something, and then grow. You know, maybe I start baking cookies for my friends right now, and then I get on Instagram in 6 months, and then maybe in a couple years I open a cookie bakery. But that's not a requirement. A lot of micropreneurs are not necessarily interested in growth. They're interested in just kind of doing their thing that they really enjoy doing, and they're monetizing it. So some examples of micropreneurs, somebody who's selling at the local farmer's market, maybe a yogi who's doing yoga in the park and join me for $10. Or if you're selling your clothes via Instagram store or even on Poshmark, people make thousands of dollars a month selling clothes on sites like Poshmark. What you don't need very much capital, but you do need time to set aside, or time that in order to create your product or service. And you need something that you can monetize, a skill that you can monetize. Finally, the gig worker or the freelancer performs a variety of gigs that or side jobs that are generally booked through apps or third-party websites. A lot of times gig workers don't specialize in one job, one skill, or one task. Somebody might drive for Uber and deliver for Instacart and then go and do dog walking or babysitting or put people's IKEA furniture together through Thumbtack. It is generally very low cost in terms of startup. However, sometimes that cost is, if you want to drive for Uber, you have to have specific insurance requirements for your car. So there's some cost associated there. Things like that. The gig worker sets their own hours. Some examples, like I said, Uber, Instacart, nannying, being a dog walker, house cleaning, furniture assembly is a big one. What do you need to do in order to be a freelancer? Well, you need free time. Most of the time you need a vehicle, though that's not always true. You need to have, the resources are relatively light. Like I said, you might need to increase your car insurance coverage. You might have to pay a subscription fee if you're doing a freelance website. But the resources as opposed to traditional entrepreneurship are very, very light. For those of you that are interested in the gig work freelance area, I have another lecture that I will put up for reference, and I also have I'm also starting a Google Doc that's got some really good resources for you. So that's it for entrepreneurial options. There will be an assignment that is related to this, and you'll probably be seeing that sometime next week.